This is The Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us.
Welcome to The Storied Outdoors. I'm your host, Brian Gill, along with my good buddy and co-host, Brad Hill. We are excited to have a special guest with us today, Wade Blevins. Wade is an avid fisherman and an artist, an intentional father, a fly tyer, and he's widely known in the state of Alabama in the fly fishing community as the Sam's One Bug guy. We're going to get into that later, but man, welcome to The Storied Outdoors, Wade.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. You've had a great host of people on this show so far, and for me to be a part of that, it's very humbling. So thank you guys. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, man, you're big time in our book, buddy.
Yep.
I love looking in the background there, Brian. I already see the fly tying setup over there.
That's where the magic happens.
Yeah. That's where the magic happens. That's so awesome. Yeah, we were just before we started recording, you were talking about how we had all gotten some in the mail, and man, I love the packaging and the whole purpose. And man, I love I've been using a couple that I've been holding on to, able to keep from getting tangled up in trees and not losing any of them. Luckily, that's a feat in itself. If you're a fly fisherman and you're able to hold on to a fly for a few trips, you've accomplished something. But I still have some Sam's One bugs that I have really, really enjoyed down here. And man, I love the whole purpose behind it. Wade, can you give us one of the things I love you do is whenever I got that first batch, it was a fullest package of story and purpose. It wasn't just some flies. So can you give us some background on the Sam's One bug and what it is that you do?
Absolutely. So my father, Craig Edward Blevins, and his father, Craig Marion Blevins, and his father, Craig Caesar Claudius Blevins, all loved to fish. And my great-grandfather and my grandfather would actually have a lot of different casting contests on the river. And one of the things that they enjoyed doing was trying to pitch bugs side-handed to where the fly would swing around and sweep under tree limbs, things like that. And they were notorious for fishing popping bugs. It was their thing. They made their own bugs even then. And so my dad, to make a long story short, my dad got really sick years ago, and I'll get into that more later. But I started out fishing as a young kid. I think I sent Brian just a brief summary of kind of what happened. My dad was an industrial arts teacher and big into woodworking, big into art himself. And he would barter a lot of times wherever we went, just to get, whether it be the hardware store or a tackle shop or whatever. And I told Brian,
quo there, a little something for something.
Exactly. So I told Brian years ago, we went into a place called Buster's Bait and Tackle. And for those of you who live in Huntsville, Alabama, you know where it is. It's right out off of Governor's Drive at the intersection of Clinton. It's a little shack, kind of a hole in a wall place. It's been there forever. Right next door to it was Blue Springs Cafe #2. If you went in there for any length of time, you'd come out smelling like a cheeseburger. So it was two places my dad loved. And so we would go and get tackle, and then oftentimes next door get a greasy cheeseburger and head out. I think the key to all of this is I've always been around fishing shops, fishing tackle stores, things like that. My first fly rod was put in my hand through a bartered trade that my dad worked out in the shop. I had no idea what he was doing. He had a nightstick that he custom built. He had a knife with a leather sheath that he had made out of an old wrench handle. He had a couple of wooden blocks and puzzles that he made and a wire puzzle. And he traded all this stuff for a fly rod, some line, some monofilament, several packs of cards of flies, popping bugs actually, and a couple of grape sodas and a few oatmeal pies.
Sound like a good deal right there.
and a pack of Marlboros. And we got out of there, and I'll never forget my dad walking out the door and saying, "Get in the truck before he changes his mind." And
y'all stole it.
We got in the truck. That's right. We got in the truck and headed out. And one of his favorite places to go was a place called Lady Ann Lake. And for those people that know the area of Madison, Huntsville, it was before it became Lady Ann Lake, it was a destination theme park that was going to be the Rocket City theme park. Kind of like Disney World, and it was a big to-do, and it never really passed. They built a railroad, they built this huge amusement area, and it just never took off. And that park, that whole area was around a spring-fed lake. There were two giant springs that fed that, and it was flooded timber. They just dammed off this huge spring into different sections, and there was standing trees in this lake with lily pads everywhere. There was a little concrete block white building that had some boats you could rent, little tackle shop there, but it was notorious for huge bass and a lot of snakes. And we would go out there as a kid with cane poles and corks and, just fishing worms, things like that, and railroad trestles that were nearby, stuff like that. And he would always take a fly rod, and I was fascinated with watching him fish with a fly rod. And on this particular day that he had traded this stuff, he had intentionally bought that rod. It was an old Eagle Claw rod with a quick grip spinning. It was like a little spring-loaded reel with a little tongue on the top. Some double tapered, kind of a mint green line. And he rigged that whole thing up and handed it to me and said, "This is yours." And I had no idea what I was doing, but we caught just huge brim and bass all day long, just had the greatest time. And from that point on, it was something that I never left home without. But even then we were fishing popping bugs. And my first job, I was 13, 14 years old, and I was counting hooks in a tackle shop, putting them in little plastic bags for fly tires that would come in and buy hooks. And I'd have to write them down, what they were, the makes and models, things like that. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Walt Holman who worked part-time, who was a member of the local club in Huntsville with the Tennessee Valley Fly Fishers. And Walt was notorious for making these incredible balsa bug poppers. And they were hand-painted. Some of them he would take a wrench, like a socket wrench, wrap aluminum foil around the socket wrench to provide this textured scale-like pattern on the aluminum foil, and then he would paint over the aluminum foil to give it different colors and put eyes on it, epoxy it, seal it, have his signature on the bottom. They were incredible, but they were
awesome.
$4 a piece back in the 80s.
Wow.
And so you get your hands on one, you're stoked because they caught fish, they sat different in the water, they were beautiful. They're like the most amazing. And I don't know if I can say this, but it sounds like Rugal, but it's a different name anyway. So, but they were incredible poppers. And my dad loved those things. I love those things. But we had a place on Wheeler Lake that we loved to fish. It was down near Joe Wheeler State Park along the bluffs there. And the rocks, there would be cuts that would go back into the rocks and shelves where water would be 3 to 4 inches off the surface below the rocks. And you could skip flies up in there. But if you got an errant cast or something, those things would hit the rocks and it, never failed. They'd come back cracked.
Oh.
And so, suddenly you had a $4 or $5 bug that was cracked or had a chip out of the front of the bug. And my dad kept thinking, there's got to be something better. There's got to be a way to have a similar bug that, is not going to chip like that. And we were at the Southeastern Council Fly Fishing Show in the 80s there at Joe Wheeler State Park. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Dale Clemens. And anybody who's ever been in rod building or custom tackle building probably knows the name Dale Clemens. He wrote several amazing books on custom wrapping of rods, where it's a beautiful work of art, to the point that they would use the thread to make images on the rod, and just incredible. Well, Dale was at the time making these huge saltwater rods that had this high density foam core handles on them instead of the old cork or hard plastic handles like the loose bait casters and stuff. And he came over to my dad, and he had these cylinders that he had drilled out that were cores to all those foam handles. And he said, I think these things would probably make good popping bugs. Well, next thing I know, there was a whole group of guys standing around a table. My dad was taking furious notes, and I still have some of those notes. And he was trying to figure out, okay, how do I get this thing to stay on a hook? And so after just multiple different flies, testing and development, he came out with this bug. And about a year after that show, Wapsie had picked up the foam and named it Live Body. And Live Body at the time was kind of a shaggy foam. It came in a 4 to 5 inch cylinder. You could get it in multiple colors. You could get it in everything from, really small diameter up to 1/4 inch, 5/16, 3/8, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, large size diameter. And that high density foam was almost indestructible. The problem that we had with it was it would absorb glue like you wouldn't believe, and it wouldn't stay together. So we had to come up with a way to bond it. And a gentleman in the club, Johnny Chamness, had a dental lab, and he had this material that was called Quick Fix. And you would put the Quick Fix in the seam and then spray it with this activator that would heat the glue up and seal it, and it became like concrete. And so my dad figured out a way to get that hook wrapped with thread into that gap, cleaned in there, sealed, and then tie off the head, and it wouldn't budge. It wouldn't move. And it just caught fish. I would go fishing with him. I'd be fishing a cork popper, and he'd catch 10 fish to my one. And and it was something that would bounce off the rocks. He could tie it quickly. It wouldn't crack. The finish wouldn't change. And that's how I got started. It was probably 1982, 83 that it was really started. And in 1984 is when he really kind of developed the one bug and got it where he was just giving them away all the time.
Yeah. So you talk about giving them away, man, that seems to be the way that you do it also. Is that because of your dad giving them away so much? Is that something that you're continuing to do? I would imagine that you've had opportunities to monetize this, but it seems like you just continue to stay the course on giving these flies away.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, Dad got really sick. I kind of had to, man, I had an incredible childhood. One of the things that I look back on, we didn't have a lot of money, but the things that we did were always outdoors. To give you an example, when I was in kindergarten, my dad drove me to school every day on a motorcycle. It didn't matter if it was rain, sleet, or snow. I had a little bubble helmet, and I would ride this motorcycle to kindergarten every day. And he traded that motorcycle in for a 1943 Chevrolet pickup that was mostly rust and somewhat blue. I often said, don't wash the truck, because if you wash the dirt out, it'll probably fall apart. Don't slam the doors. They might not come back open. So, and that truck, I mentioned this in what I wrote to Brian, was it had a weird thing about it. It would slow down at any bridge, any body of water, sometimes would come to a complete stop. I had a difficult time seeing out over the hood at being that little. And so I didn't really know what was going on. My grandfather and my dad would always, joke about it. I've later figured out they were checking the water for fish and seeing what was going on. So
yeah, they were asking that question. They were asking that question. Exactly. I wonder if there's a fish in there.
That's right. So, we were notorious about, going to public lakes, state parks, anywhere there was a waterfall or a creek. And that was what we did. I mean, we just got out, got into the outdoors, and enjoyed just all kinds of things, even, going out and looking for old artifacts along the river, things of that nature. Now you can't do that anymore, but it was those times with him that were the most rewarding. He had a sense of direction about him that was unlike any other man I'd ever met in my life. And his game for me was, let's go get lost. And he would literally drive just wherever. We would have a great adventure. We'd go out, we'd fish, we'd pick plums off the riverbanks, all kinds of stuff. And then when the day was done, he'd say, okay, get us home. And it didn't matter what intersection we came to, he would say left or right. And he left it up to me to make that decision. Sometimes it'd take us 45 minutes to an hour to get home because we might take a wrong turn somewhere. But it was one of those things that it taught me a sense of direction. It also taught me to learn to look at my surroundings when you're going somewhere. Things like that I'll never forget. And it was one of those things that it was amazing to watch him build that into me. But to kind of get more back on topic, I know I'm kind of all over the place here with that. The reason that I give these away is as he got older, he got sick, and got really sick. Both of his kidneys failed. He was on a submarine. He was on a second boomer ever built, the USS Abraham Lincoln. It was a George Washington class boomer boat, nuclear propulsion. And he ended up getting strep throat and several other things that never got cured on the boat. And he was released medically from the boat. And years later, it took a toll on his kidneys. And his kidneys shriveled up the size of walnuts. He was not going to the bathroom. His blood pressure was through the roof. And he went to the doctor one day, and the doctor said, pack your bags, we're going to Birmingham. And 2 weeks later, he came back with a fistula in his arm where they connected multiple veins together, and he was on home dialysis. And so my mom and I became nurses for him for what seemed like 11 years. And you can only dialyze so long on a machine before your body starts just falling apart. And when all of that happened, he was on dialysis 3 days a week. And so each time you go on, you'd spend 3 to 4 hours, sometimes 5 hours on a machine, and you wouldn't have a lot of time out in the woods anymore, so to speak. So his time was very limited when he did get out, but he couldn't go out by himself. And many times I was either working or I was in school or whatever the case may be, and he needed people to go fishing with him. And when he started getting this bug designed, he used it again as a bartering tool. A lot of times he would use the bugs to strike up a conversation, talk to people, try to get access to a private pond or a lake, or, people would say, man, I'd love to buy some of those bugs. And he said, well, I'll sell you a dozen of them if you take me fishing. And so one of the guys that he became really good friends with, and they'd go fishing all the time in Bedford County Lake in Tennessee, he said, well, Sam, I have a habit of asking people their medical stuff before I ever get in a boat with them. And my dad said, look, if we sit here and discuss all of my medical problems, we'll never get an opportunity to fish. So let's get in the boat. We get out in the boat. We'll discuss what's going on. But he, instead of selling him the bugs, he used it as an opportunity to start a friendship and get an opportunity to go fishing and have somebody to take him fishing when he wasn't able to really go by himself. And what he found is he found more enjoyment in giving people bugs and watching them catch fish on something he created. And he often, talked about that, in that there were bugs all over the world. It wasn't just Alabama. They were going out to people all over the place. He had friends he'd met in the Federation of Fly Fishers and people that he knew from the Navy that were, picking up bugs and taking them to New Zealand and Australia and Japan and all kinds of places. And so he would get letters of people catching fish on these bugs from all over the world and different types of species. It was just incredible, and he loved that. And so when he passed away in 2005, it stung. It was a difficult time for me. And about 2000, and I'd always kind of picked up tying the bugs early on as a kid, but the memory of him giving away those bugs stuck with me. And I became a Christian later in life. 1999, 2000 was really when I felt like the Lord was calling me to himself. I was working for a company called Cook's Pest Control. John Cook Sr. at the time was a devout Christian, shared the gospel with me the first 30 days I was there. Just poured into me, into a small men's group, and asked me to go to a business meeting one day. And we got there. It was on a Thursday morning, 6:30 in the morning. He told me to show up early. He had a bag of Hardee's biscuits and a bunch of books. And I suddenly found out we were there to do a study on Sermon on the Mount. And I had no idea what I was doing, why I was there. But those 5 guys that were at that meeting continued to be mentors in my life for years. And that study ended up turning into, a weekly study that goes on even today. And it's been amazing to see that transformation. So in 2001, I was baptized December 9th of 2001 at a church here in Decatur, First Bible Church. And Steve Bateman, our pastor, a PhD there in theology, teaches it like an attorney, presents a case, builds a case, shares what he needs to straight out of the Word, teaches straight from the Bible. It's just great, sound theology. He's a graduate of Dallas Theological Seminary. He had his PhD from Columbia, South Carolina, and just gives application with it as well. And that, from that side of it, when I was changed, I realized there was a different story that needed to be told. It wasn't so much about fishing anymore. And the grace that I received, it changed my life. And I wanted to be able to share after Dad's passing. Dad and I had a lot of conversations about this. We never, and I know I'm all over the place, guys, here. We never really attended church growing up. And the reason I say that is my dad was Baptist, Southern Baptist, if you will, and my mom was Methodist. And her mom was Methodist at one time and kind of went to be Catholic, which was a strange thing, but I think it was because the medical hospital was a Catholic hospital that took care of her for such a long time. And but all that to be said, when he was on dialysis, he was a school teacher. Both my parents were school teachers, my mom and my dad, my aunt and uncle, my grandmother, everybody, my grandfather were all teachers. I don't know how I didn't end up being a teacher. But in order to meet their schedule, they would dialyze on Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, just as because he wanted to have Saturday open to go and do things, but school was a difficult time and they didn't really want to have to dialyze every day of the week during school, especially with classes and things like that. And so, it forced me to do a lot of things as a kid, being an only child at 10, 12 years old, that I didn't expect, doing, cooking dinner, 4 or 5 nights a week, or doing laundry at that age all the time to make sure that things were being taken care of the house, cleaning up the house, yard work, whatever the case may be. But behind every good man is a woman, right? And my mom was incredible. She might as well have been a nurse with all the people that she took care of, and especially with my dad. And I'll never take that for granted. But when we discussed what was going on. And after my baptism, Dad and my mom started attending church again. And they attend a small church outside of their home in Shelbyville, Tennessee, there in Flat Creek. And it's a little Methodist church there. But and he got back involved, and it was such a great thing to see. And there were several things that I can share later that were influential. And guys, I know I'm talking a lot. Do you have time for me to read something to you?
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I found this long after he passed away. I actually didn't even realize it had been written until recently. And this is dated January 6th of 2005. And it says, "To the family of an organ donor, dear friends, it is getting very close to the 14th anniversary of your tragic loss. I share your grief and sorrow, yet at the same time, I shall be forever grateful for the generous and courageous decisions you made on that day. Because of your kindness, I have been blessed with the opportunity to have witnessed the wedding of my only son, enjoyed watching the growth of his family. He has 4 lovely children, ages 6, 4, 2.5, and 14 months. The 2 oldest boys and the 2 younger ones are girls. All have bright blue eyes, blonde hair, except for the oldest girl, which has bright red hair and looks a lot like strawberry shortcake. They're great kids and a pleasure to be around. I've tried to get them to call me Mr. Grandfather Sir, but it comes out as Papaw every time. I've retired from school teaching when I had the transplant. I still teach a little bit, but it's mostly teaching people how to cope with life, pain, frustration, and disappointment. I try to get them to enjoy life by adjusting their priorities. I teach them fly fishing, fly tying, how to relax, and find pleasure in the important things in life, such as friends and family, good food, and fun. My idea is if it's not good for you and it's not fun, you probably shouldn't do it. We recently moved to from Alabama to Tennessee, and truly enjoy the people in the country. The hills and the streams, along with the wildlife we see, help us to relax and soak in the beauty which surrounds us. Please be assured that my family and I are truly blessed and grateful for the generous gift. Be assured also that a great number of people have had their lives improved, touched in a positive way only because I was alive and able to help them. My wife was recently invited to talk to her club members about her most memorable moment in life. She said it was when she saw me for the first time after the transplant and my skin was pink instead of green. I had been on dialysis for 10 years and 6 months, and it was looking more like a lima bean than a human being. I had just reached the limit of what could be done with dialysis and still function. Now, after 14 years of freedom, I'm reminded each day of how lucky I am. Again, thank you. May God bless you all, and you're forever in our prayers. With great appreciation, Sam. And
Man,
when I read that, it hit home, and I realized there's no better gift than the gift of Jesus Christ. And how can I promote that? How can I tell that story more? And when because people were asking all the time, hey man, I'd like to buy a dozen bugs. I'd like to buy 6 bugs. I'd like to buy a couple bugs. How can I get some bugs? I could have easily gone to Orvis or Umpqua or several others, but they would only provide a percentage of the deal, and they wanted the rights to the bug.
mm-hmm.
Dad did a poor man's patent on the bug years ago. He did have a copyright on a couple things that are specific to that bug and to the LIB. But that's since come and gone. And I just really wasn't willing to give all that up. I felt like there was a greater purpose. And I toyed with do I make money at this? It really wasn't what I wanted to do. And when I started seeing people, especially my friends, the close friends that were, and they're catching fish on this thing, they're loving it, they're telling other people about it. I started looking for people, not only in the industry, but people that carried on that type of persona. Stephen Rockarts, if you're listening, man, thank you for what you're doing. I picked you out of a crowd of people, and I knew, as Mater would say, I knew I made a good choice. Right? So, and it's been such a blessing to watch how people react, because number one, they don't expect it to be free,
Mm.
right? They expect to have to pay something for it. But when you tell them, look, just send me an address, and a lot of people think it's a scam. Send me an address, I'll send you some bugs. And with that, it allows me the opportunity to share a little bit about the gospel. And whether people accept that or not, that's between them and the Lord. I'm just here to be a friend and provide something that's a little different, a little unique in this time and age where things are just crazy and hectic. And I know that's a lot of words. I'm sure you guys got more questions. So.
No, gosh, man, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, man. What a beautiful,
yeah.
Just to hear those words. I'm sure it's just good for you to read them again, and read them out loud. And man, those words are rich. And man, there's no greater gift than, someone that lays their life down. Right. And so, to see that kind of a gift, which is incredible to me that we can swap out organs. Let's be honest. Let's just identify that to begin with. There's a lady in my church that she plays piano sometimes on the worship team with me. And she was, really sick. Her liver was failing. And we went up to UAB to visit her. And I thought, when I saw her, and I had not seen her in a while, that's the last time I'm going to see her. And me and Paige had come up. Remember, Brian, we came up there, and man, it was really tough. And then a week, not even a week later, just a couple of days later, something came through. Here it is. Here's a match. And the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, she's had this surgery. She's out of the hospital. She's back to normal. It's unbelievable. It's like, I went down to O'Reilly Auto Parts and got an oil filter and swapped it out. It's incredible, the capabilities. So that always blows me away, God's creation and the way he's working, and the way he's blessed doctors to be able to figure things out like that. So, wow, what a blessing to be able to write that to that family,
Yeah.
Wade,
when Dad started, when Dad started dialysis from the VA hospital, there were so many people at that time that were trying to get transplants, and they weren't going well. This was early 80s, late 80s, and the success rate at that time was like, I want to say it was less than 70%. And so over the years, for 11 years, he watched that success rate climb. And the doctors at UAB, man, I tell you what, those guys are amazing. And nowadays, they're doing that constantly, and the success rate of a transplant nowadays is just unbelievable. So you're right, it's amazing. When doctor came out from the surgery, they had done multiple organ transplants from this young man, and he told my mom, first thing out of his mouth was, he's peeing like a racehorse. And and when she walked in and saw the pinkness in his face, and tears just came streaming down. And he got a new lease on life, and he knew it. And and he just wanted to share from that going forward. And I think that's why he gave so many bugs away. Same kind of reason.
Wade, my dad, he had a lung transplant.
Wow.
And ended up, he only lived 97 days after that transplant. But it was, being able to see him for those 3 months and not have to have oxygen, and not have to be able to, he was able to hold his grandchildren and all that. It was, a special time. One thing I do every year is I take off the day that he died, and I go up to the lake, Lake Gunnersville. You're very familiar with that. And I go fishing, because that's what we did. And a couple of years ago, I was fishing in my kayak, and I had Sam's one bug tied on, and it was one that Stephen Rockerts had given me. And I was fishing underneath a dock, a boathouse, and I couldn't even see my bug. It was so far under there. But I hear this explosion, and I've got my 5 weight, and that Sam's one bug, and I pull in about a 2.5, 3 pound bass. And it just, in my mind, knowing the story of your dad making that bug and me being on a trip to honor my dad, it kind of came full circle in that moment. So I just really appreciate your contribution to fly fishing and to the Lord's work, and it doesn't go unnoticed, man. And every time I see a post of somebody catching a bug, a fish on a bug, and I hear of all the fish that Brad catches down at Bolton Branch, man, it's just a smile comes to my face because I know that the work and the heart behind each one of those that you tie.
Thank you. And that's, guys, that's what it's all about. I love hearing the stories. There's so many people that this bug has affected, and it amazes me to see just the people and the enjoyment and what's being done. And man, I've made some incredible friends over this silly little fly. And and I feel like I've been in the industry now, well, gosh, as far as long as I can remember. And it's been an amazing journey. And I keep trying to improve the bug. I keep trying to make some little adjustments here and there that will make it a little more durable. I just want something that people can enjoy. I've got a few bugs that I still have with me that I know have caught over 100 fish. I've got one in a frame on the wall that's got my dad sitting there with a smallmouth in his hands that I know caught over 200 fish in a single day. And, when you think about it, there's not many flies out there that'll handle 100 fish.
No.
They're going to be destroyed. It's, to me, man, if you get 50 fish out of a single bug, 100 fish out of a bug,
that's impressive.
And it's served its purpose, right? And and to know that people are catching fish like that, they got to be having fun. If they're not, there's something wrong with them.
I took my son. I took my son the other day, Wade, and he was looking through some old photo albums, and he said, "Daddy," he's 7 years old. He said, "Daddy, I just really want to go hunting and fishing more." So I called up a friend as soon as I could.
Hey,
okay, let's go. I called up a friend, and we went out, and he was fishing with my 3-weight, and he had a 1 bug on it, and this fish exploded on it, and he bared down on it, and that fish took him for a ride and ended up breaking off. And so whenever I got those in the mail the other day from you, I thought that came at a good time because I just lost one.
Good. That's good. My dad often said, he would tie them in a short period of time. He could whip those things out, and he didn't want to spend any more time on it than it took to lose a bug, barring bad knots or getting in tree limbs or whatever the case may be. And I find I am guilty because I'll sit there and paint them and epoxy them and coat them and spend a lot of time on a bug, and then usually those are the ones that immediately on the first back cast I'm snagged up in a tree somewhere. So,
oh man.
But he was notorious for creating just some strange stuff. I don't know. I think I told you guys I used to run a fly shop in Huntsville, Alabama. Probably wasn't the best place in the world to have a fly shop back in the early 90s. But we had an amazing selection of luggage and women's sweaters and fly tying material and dog beds and you name it. But one of the things that, and I still have some sitting over here that's funny, is everything we gave people when they bought something it came in this Kelly green Orvis plastic bag. When you package it up, hand it to them. And my dad would never throw those bags away. He would always stash them. And he and I were out on Madison County Lake in a little John boat one day, and the fishing was kind of slow. It was a cold day, early spring. And he had a 1 bug on top and had about a 4.5 foot dropper. And he put this fly on the bottom of the bug and on the dropper. And man, he just started waylaying these huge shell crackers, just one after another. And I'm like, what are you doing? What's going on over there? And so he swung the bug over to me to let me take a look at it, and I cut it off the line and tied it on my line. And he got so mad. But it was a dragonfly nymph that was kind of a peacock herl body with it had pheasant tail on it, pheasant wrap around it, brown hackle, but the shell casing on it was those green Orbis garbage bags.
Oh my goodness!
Or the gift bags, and that bright green on it, and had some little plastic eyes, and he was just wearing the fish out. And we sat there. I bet we caught 100, 200 fish that afternoon just playing with those silly flies, and he was always coming up with stuff like that. Just
that's great.
Just his creativity. It was really amazing.
That's cool. There was a guy, I can't remember. It was when I was going down a rabbit hole on the old YouTube, and some of these fly fishing videos, there's tons of them. And, but there was this one guy, that was talking about like something about when you're going after a fish and there's this communication between you and the fish, like when you make something, right, that fools that fish and you're able to catch that fish. And there's this, like, you get into there's this whole story that happens, and you've hoodwinked this fish into thinking it's eating something that's, it's hungry, and it's not, and obviously you catch it. And it was a really cool way to look at it. Like we get this connection to, I guess ultimately he didn't say this, but it made me think about it. Ultimately it's this connection from us to this creation that we get to experience when you make something and you catch something. Like this year I've gone down the tying rabbit hole and got some tools and trying to learn how to tie some of my favorite ones that I use a lot. And I learned how to tie a woolly booger, like just a classic olive woolly booger. And if you've listened to the podcast, some I talk about, and Brian mentioned it earlier, Bolton Branch, which is really a ditch next to my church in the middle of Mobile. I didn't know it was called that, and I pulled it up on the map, and I was like, oh, that's actually like a creek. It's Bolton Branch. Like, it's not just a ditch. But yeah, 50 yards outside of my office door in the middle of town. I mean, there's cars going by. I mean, there's a football stadium right down the street. We're in the middle of a neighborhood, and it's deep green water, and it's, the grocery carts are your structure that you're fishing around down in the bottom, and there's a tire down there. It's a creek. The difference between a creek and a crick is one has a tire in it, right? So, and sure enough, man, I threw that little olive woolly booger down there, and it went down, right in one of this little section, and just pulled out a ton of a little brim. And it's like one of the red spotted sunfish, and just these colorful little fish.
I saw that picture. Oh,
man, it's
beautiful.
such a beautiful little fish. And then you send your things in the mail. I was like, that's exactly right. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding up this sticker that Wade drew called the Gateway Drug, and it's really like a brim, and it really is true. Like, there's so much fun to catch and so much fun to see. And I had written about, just how there's so much beauty in those little fish, and in a place that doesn't look beautiful, as we would call beautiful, down in this ditch with the trash. And, those Sam's One bugs, well, I'm telling you, they tear those things up. Now, I still haven't, I think I usually spook the bass. Like, for some reason, they can see me and they're not buying what I'm selling. But those little brim, they're dumb enough to come up and just smoke that stuff, man. And it's so much fun. So much fun.
That's great.
Wade, you and I were...
That was my dad's favorite fish. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say, you and I were texting the other day, and we started talking about Cricket Hall in Albertville. And Cricket Hall, for those of you who may not know, it was an old bait and tackle store, sporting goods store, really.
Like a little gas station almost.
Yeah. Gas station, sporting goods store, fishing store. But my wife's granddad ran the place, and his name was Creel. And we started talking, and Wade, you said you had a hat from Cricket Hall, and I've only seen one other hat from Cricket Hall, and it's in my father-in-law's workshop. And
yeah, it's kind of an old trucker style hat. It had this vinyl image on the front that had this leaping bass, and the way the bass was designed, of course it had Cricket Hall on it, but it looked like it was eating these two ducks that were flying behind it, because it was kind of an outdoor store too, right? I think it might have even had, I don't know if it was like a doe or a buck or something, a deer on it. But yeah, I mean, somewhere around this house, there's one of those hats at the farm, one or the other, and maybe in a box somewhere. But I used to love going in there because, and I think I mentioned this, I remember there was an incredible selection of man's worms there, the old paddle tail worms, and something about those worms. I love being able to scratch the little scratch and sniff and smell them, the blackberry and the strawberry and the blueberry. And, just, I don't know. I was young then, but I can remember Dad going in there and buying crickets and minnows, especially when the brim were on bed,
So this was a gas station too?
Fish, so.
This was the gas station too?
Well, it looked like it. I don't know if I honestly can't remember if they sold gas or not. It just had that appearance of being an old gas station with I want to say it had like a building attached out to the side. I remember it being off of like 431 down there and just pulling in, and we'd have the boat with us, and we'd fill up with, all kinds of things. I think I told Brian, if I vaguely remember, I bought my first Mossy Oak camo shirt there.
Yeah.
Years ago. I can remember buying a camouflage shirt there, thinking, God, this is going to be great for turkey season. So, because it had some bright colored green leaves in it too. So
Krill was
awesome. I was wondering if you could get your biscuits and your bait all at the same spot.
Yeah, you weren't too far from it. The biscuits there. Krill, he was a legend on Lake Guntersville, and man, it was back.
What a name too!
Oh,
Really?
I know.
I mean, good grief!
Yeah,
it's like prophetic.
I told Stephen that's why all I catch is brim is because my last name's Gill, is bluegill. I can sniff out a brim now. We'll be fishing for trout or bass, and I'll catch a brim. Don't you worry, I'll find them.
Don't you worry.
But no, Krill was he was great on Lake Guntersville right before they even all the depth finders, and we would be going down and he'd say, there's a stump right over there, and he remembered it from before it was even flooded. And so it was just incredible to hear the knowledge and wealth of information that he would bring when we would be fishing, and he'd wear us out, man.
So Wade, what's one of the favorite like stories that you've heard, or places that the Sam's One Bug has traveled to that you love?
Oh, gosh. So I started a friendship with a gentleman in Japan who, and guys, I did not know that there were smallmouth in Japan. I was naive.
Really?
I had no idea that there were smallmouth there. And it's a big deal. I mean, the rivers are beautiful. They're crystal clear. There's lots of rocks. I mean, it's just amazing. And there's a gentleman that lived in Alabama, who was stationed in Alabama, that was going overseas and had become friends with this other gentleman. And he's like, hey, I want to take him some one bugs. How do I make this happen? I'm like, dude, I'm on it. So, I packaged up all this stuff, tying materials, bugs, some stickers, and sent it down to the base in Alabama. He got it there. His name's Chris Lynch. If you guys follow him on Instagram, he's just a great dude. He loves some of those old cafe style motorcycles and big fly fisherman, and just fantastic guy. He's helped in a lot of different areas. And I think he's the one that actually helped turn me on to either the Project Healing Waters and fly fishing also. But anyway, he went over and he took it over to him. And the next thing I know, it was around Christmas time, I received this box, and it came all the way from Japan, and it had a banner in it that was like a traditional Japanese banner that had a picture of a kind of a stained glass window and a church and a cross. It had several stickers that came from Japan that are in the traditional language, and one says "Pray for big fish." Another one, has just a bass emblem. I've got one on my drying wheel over here that was a bluegill. That's just an incredible little sticker as well. And then he sent me over some flies too, and we struck up a conversation. And just loved hearing the story, seeing the fish that he was catching. And of course, he started tying them himself over there. And his bugs, man, they look better than mine did. I was like, wow, for first time tying, this guy was killing it. And so, that was amazing to me.
That's incredible.
I really
Japan.
loved that. Yeah. I had no idea there was smallmouth there. And
no, learn something new every day.
Fascinated with us catching smallmouth here too. So pretty cool.
That's one thing I've never caught is a smallmouth. I really would love to do that.
I think I know a guy. We could probably fix that problem.
We might could.
might be able to fix that. That's awesome.
I think that needs to happen.
That's good.
Sooner than later.
Wade, what's I know you're always tying, top water's heating up as the summer rolls in. What's on the docket? What's your next adventure for Wade Blevins?
Oh gosh. Well, there's a lot of things going on with my work, but I think our next big adventure, we love to camp. I would love to get my kids out before they get out of the house. I still have all 4 of them at home right now. 2 of them have just accepted jobs and are doing really well, and I'm so proud of them. And but my youngest is starting college, and before everybody starts heading out and leaving, I'd love nothing more than to get them out to see the national parks, and just take a family trip out west before they get to a point where they're gone and they're busy with their lives and don't have the time to do it. And guys, I got to give a shout out to my wife, an amazing woman. She left a career years ago to be a stay-at-home mom, and she has homeschooled all 4 of our kids from early on all the way through up until college, and done a fantastic job, poured into them the gospel. Just an amazing woman. And Kathy, if you're listening, I love you. So thankful for what you've done for me and for my family, and couldn't do it without you. So
wow,
that's important. So like I said, behind every good man, there's a good woman, right? So it just, she's been my rock. So
that's incredible. I hope you're able to pull that off, man. That's something that's certainly on my list. We started close by this past summer, and we took the kids up to the Smoky Mountain National. That was easy access. But we're turning our eyes west, hopefully to get out there and see some of these incredible places. I mean, we have so much in this country that's unbelievable to see in person. And so rather than, we had fun going to Disney. That was cool and all, but for that kind of money, we can go see something way cooler. Mm-hmm. And so we're hoping to get outside and go see some of these great national parks. So man, I hope you're able to do that, man. That's awesome.
It's refreshing to the soul, right? It's something that everybody needs to do at least once. I had the opportunity as a kid to go with my parents, them being teachers. They were out all summer, and so we packed everybody up in a van and took a camper, and we traveled out west, made a huge loop, and hit all the national parks. And it's something I'll never forget. My cousin, I actually have a double cousin. My tree does split, guys. Brother and sister married brother and sister. My mom and dad actually met early on when my aunt and uncle were getting engaged. My dad's oldest sister married my mom's oldest brother. And so my mom became very close and attracted to my dad. My dad was attracted to her, and next thing you know, they were getting married too. So I have what's called a double cousin. His name is William Morehampton. Everybody calls him Bill. It's a strange thing in our family. They all have nicknames. And so he and I are genetically identical. So if I ever need a kidney, Bill, you better. So anyway,
Yep.
He lives in Missouri, and he's I think he's 6, 7, maybe 6 years older than I am. We don't look a lot alike, but genetically we're almost identical because we have the same set of grandparents, same set of genetic lines, and so it's pretty incredible when you start looking at it.
Cool. Well, man, we're so thankful you took some time to join us, man, and
thank you.
It's been fun to interact with you over social media and interact over messages, but it's really a gift to be able to sit and chat with you and hear the story, and hopefully hopefully people will listen in and check out the Sam's One Bug, and maybe the legend will continue to grow.
Thank you.
The Sam's One Bug.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm hoping I'll get to meet a bunch of people I've met online at the show coming up in Birmingham on April 23rd. There's so many people that I've shared bugs with, or they've shared stuff with me that we've talked over just time and time again over social media, but I haven't had a chance to actually shake their hand and get to know them. And man, I'm really looking forward to that. So
is that the fly fishing film tour
it.
thing that they're doing, Brian?
That's correct.
Oh, it's going to be at Deep South, isn't that right? I wish I could come up there for that. It's just not possible. It looks like a cool event, though.
Yeah, I've been a couple of times. It's really cool. I don't think I'm going to get to go this year. My niece has a birthday party that weekend, and so. But man, I was really hoping to get to go.
Yeah.
Well, we all need to get together sometime soon. You guys get up this way, you let me know. We'll make it happen.
Let's do it, man.
Sounds like a plan. Well, we're so thankful for everyone that listens. We're blown away by the support that we've been getting. And, much like you, Wade, we don't, this is just fun for us and an opportunity to share stories and to give away these conversations so far. And one of the ways that, we can help grow this conversation is people that do share it with their pals and share it with their buddies, share it online. And also one of the big ways is, people that will leave us reviews. Reviews are the really kind of the engine or the gas that really propels a podcast forward. So, many have, and we'd love as many more as we can get reviews and people that take time to leave us a review and then share these conversations with their friends and pass it around. And, we hope these stories were certainly encouraging to me to hear this, the life of your dad and yourself and the way you guys have been, just a blessing to so many others. And we hope this conversation achieves that same thing as a blessing to others, encourages others, and really challenges people to sit down and write their own stories, share their own adventures in what we call the storied outdoors.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please take some time to leave us a review, or better yet, share it with a friend. We hope these stories encourage you to write your own stories and share your own adventures in the storied outdoors.